Hello, sir. Good evening. So this is
Uh,
Dr. Rajat.
yes, Dr. Rajat, please
Yes,
proceed.
sir. As per my opinion, sir, the research is all about searching for advanced knowledge, and the basic formula behind the research is x2 equals to x1 plus delta x. So what
All right.
delta x we are incorporating? So that is all about the research.
Wow, this is really amazingly said. So delta is the change which you are trying to, throw upon. Is that right, Dr. Rajat?
Yeah, sir.
Super. Any other thoughts, or shall we go ahead? Maybe from some of the students we can hear. We have some MTech scholars also. All right. Let me go ahead with what are the paths in research. Then I would come back to this particular slide. Now, the first and the foremost questions. Maybe when you are in the academic field or in any of the fields, there is a kind of a peer pressure, or maybe from the externals, or maybe out of your own interest. You want to write a research paper. So, do we have some standard steps? I'm again throwing this particular question to the forum. Do we have any standard steps for writing a good research paper? Maybe you might have come across certain standards which say that, okay, these are the parts which needs to be there so that the paper gets a good readership. Do we have some certain procedures, or have you come across such? Any thoughts about it? Someone is trying to answer, but I'm sorry I couldn't hear you. Maybe whenever we proceed to a particular system, or maybe we are doing something, we have a standard operating procedure. Do we have something like that for writing papers?
Good
You know,
evening, sir.
yeah.
Sir, my concern is finding the problems and
Sir, could you please share your good name, sir?
I'm Perumal, sir.
Perumal, sir. Please go
Yes.
ahead, sir.
Yeah, finding the problems and what are in the that problem, what gaps is already is available, and which methodology is suitable for the filling that gaps, and how to forming the methodology to solve that problem. Uh, Finally, there any possible result and how to analyze that result. That result is suitable for the adaptable for the solution or not. So that point wise, we can process.
All right, sir. I think you have told in a very detailed way. Maybe let us think about what are the few steps. Does any other people want to add some more points in this to what Permal sir just mentioned? Any other thoughts? The standard goes like, we have a problem definition, and then we are trying to query what could be the solutions for this particular set of problems, and how do we go about it, and how do we compare the results with the existing works? And maybe we try to say that, okay, this particular method which I chose would be more optimal than the existing methods. Maybe that could be, one way of trying to target research. Any other pointers? Or maybe can we go with how many types of research papers typically the journals accept? Can we go with this pointer first? Before we go with what are the steps for writing the research papers, what are the types of research papers generally the journals accept? I mean, I'm talking about the standard journals which are in the Web of Science or maybe the Scopus Index. Or maybe, I do not know, in your college, what do we call? We call it, as per the UGC, we call it as the Annexure A, high impact journals. So what type of papers generally we can write?
Review-based articles and
Yes,
case
sir.
study-based articles and design and development based articles.
Right.
Maybe some types, sir.
All right, sir. So review
So other
articles
than
we
that,
have.
we can say it as like short communications.
All right, short communication. Sir, Dr. Praveen, sir.
Yes, sir.
So short communications. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Maybe typically if you are targeting IEEE magazines, then you would be going with short communications. I'm just quoting an example. All right. All right. Generally, we have, as people said, we have two types of articles. One would be a review paper where we are going with what are the existing systems, and then we are trying to summarize those existing systems, and we are trying to pinpoint what are the challenges and the future directions upon how the problems could be solved. So this is one category of papers which might be accepted. And generally, as per my experience, the review papers citations are especially more than the proposed papers, because most of the people who are doing their research, especially their PhD or their postdoctoral studies, for their work, they actually go with the review articles so that they get a summarized form of what are the works which are happening in their domain. So having said that, let's go with some of the steps which I follow. I'm not saying that this is a standard. I'm just saying that this is the thing which maybe my team is following right here in VIT. So the first step would be your ideation. Now, what do we mean by this particular word, ideation? So maybe you're having a cup of tea and you just get that idea that, okay, why can't this particular work can be done in this particular way, or some kind of a novel technique that why can't there be a better, say for example, why can't there be a better method by which we can calculate how many people have been vaccinated, because this is a huge data. So do we have any good or efficient methods by which we can try to find out how many people have been vaccinated, or how many people need booster dose? So right now this is the talk which is going on. So this is actually called the ideation. So you're just thinking about the idea, and maybe you're just trying to make a note of that idea. And then what you do is the feasibility check. That is, okay, I have this particular idea. Now let me check whether this particular idea is actually possible or practically it can be implemented. Because if it is just an idea, people should be, accepting your idea. So you need a kind of a stipulated proof that, okay, this particular idea would actually work. So obviously, you need to have a feasibility check. That is where we are going with the ground reality check, which we call it as. So maybe what I would do is, again, let me try to check out in the net what are the things which are already existing based on this particular idea. So that is where we come up to a word called research. So this is called, we are trying to search and search again. So we are trying to redo and search. That is the word research. So this is where we are going with, okay, this particular idea is pretty novel. So now what do I do? The second step would be the team formation. That is the collaboration, which is the most important part in your research, because again, when you are trying to do a particular work, you might not be an expert in all the areas. Maybe there is a particular stage of implementation, there is a particular stage of design, there is a particular stage of writing, there is a particular stage of how do you how do you collect the papers. So you need an exact team, and how do you formulate this particular team? Can we have any inputs from the people here? When you are starting a particular work, how do we decide upon the team members? Any inputs process, or maybe we can have some inputs from the students also. Forget about research. Whenever you are forming a team, how do you decide the team? Let it be any work. Maybe it might be a syllabus revision work, or maybe a question paper setting, or maybe I need to conduct a project meeting. So how do you decide that, okay, these are the team members who would be the part of the work, or who would be doing the work? So how do we decide that?
Depending on their expertise.
Exactly. So depending on their expertise, that is one very good point. Any other pointers? Because there are two important points. How do you decide the team? Which is very, very important when you are especially writing the papers. Expertise is one, maybe I can say one pillar. What would be the second pillar? No, that is what we are saying. So let us take any other analogy. Maybe I'm trying to formulate a team for doing any of the work. So how do we formulate the team? For example, in a typical IT scenario, I get a requirement from a client. And then based on this requirement, I try to decide, as a CTO, I try to decide, okay, I need to have this particular members in this team, and this particular member would be the lead of it. So how do I get to decide that? One would be the expertise. There is another important criteria. How do we decide it?
The levels of initiative?
All right, the levels almost close. Levels of initiative. I think Dr. Anasuya is almost close to the answer. Any other thoughts, professors and students? How about the wavelength? You know, I need to have the thought process in the same way as of the other team members. That is the reason why we say in IT, right? When we are trying to coordinate the systems, we need to have a synchronization. Say, for example, we are having this particular meeting. So I am one of the client when we are connecting to Microsoft Teams, and I am trying to, my system clock is trying to connect with the clock which is there in the Teams server. So it's working in the same kind of wavelength. So there are two important points. One would be the experts, and then the second would be your how do we have it in the same wavelength so that we do not have any kind of deviation from the work. And the most important point is it okay if we can collaborate with outside our organization? Maybe especially when you're trying to do a research paper. Is it fine if we can, try to find out the experts from different organizations or even different countries? Has anyone has any experience in this? Maybe I have formulated, a team which is consisting of not only the internal members as well as we have certain external members as well. The one thing which most of the journals look out is what are the number of people who are actually writing the paper, that is the number of authors, and especially their affiliation. Now, what do we mean by affiliation is what industry or what organization they belong to or which country they belong to. So generally when we say that, we need to have a really, out of the box thinking, or maybe the ideation should be perfectly done. It is recommended that we try to go with some of the externals, maybe outside the country or maybe outside the organization as well, so that you get a different perspective of your idea, right? So once this particular team is formulated, we need to go with the third point, which is the most important point in writing a paper, which is the brainstorming sessions. So what do we do here is we try to again discuss the idea. So can we have some of the, maybe this particular idea can be forecasted or can be projected in a different way, maybe in a better way, or maybe I've thought about this particular idea. It might be implemented in this particular scenario, or these might be the ways of doing it. So all these would be discussed in the brainstorming sessions. And of course, in the brainstorming sessions, you would be able to judge that, okay, this particular team member is, good in this work. As Dr. Anasuya said, the expertise. So maybe we can say that, certain members would be, really good in English writing. So maybe we can do the proofread by them. or maybe certain members would be really good in, you know, blueprinting your work. So what do I mean by blueprinting is the architecture. So how do I design my particular proposal so that it could be understood by the readers? And always remember that the first reader would be your reviewer. So I need to put my exact thought process in the paper in form of a particular architecture so that the reviewer can exactly understand what I am trying to convey. So this is discussed in the brainstorming session and the work division. And of course, the most important points is set deadlines. So every journal, let it be a normal journal, or we have a special issue. So it has its own deadlines. So as a team lead, here in the brainstorming session, we try to formulate, okay, this particular member would be going as a corresponding author. What do I mean by corresponding author is the author who is going to communicate or try to consolidate the entire work. Or maybe sometimes the corresponding author would be the first author also. So the corresponding author has to try to find out what is the deadline by the journal, and 10 days before that particular deadline, it should be a hard deadline. That means you need to submit your work, because many a times we get rejection because some of the journals they have a particular quantity that, okay, for this particular issue I need to have maybe 100 articles. So when I reach that particular 100 limit, I try to reject it no matter how good your paper is. So it is better we try to push our paper way before the deadline. So that is one form of doing that hard deadline. Now, what do we mean by soft deadline is the complete paper is ready. Now we need to do a complete proofread or the format as per the journal. So I would also be discussing about how do we set the format. That's not a big task at all. So we have a particular tool. I would also be discussing about that. And then the proofread, that's very much important. So what do I mean by proofread is each member has to sit and read the entire paper so that we get the continuity. And also, are we trying to deviate from our idea? Because sometimes as the time goes on, we start trying to, because we are trying to read so many topics. So we are trying to, go slightly away from the original idea. So that should not be happening. So this particular proofread process, make sure that we are trying not to deviate from the original idea. And also, we are also doing a English grammar check, which is very important because we are not native English speakers. So obviously, maybe our communication is not as good as the West. So we need to have this particular proofread. I would also say, how do we do that? Then the second part is structuring. Now, how do we structure, or how do we put apart the different sections of our paper? Before that, though we have an idea, we need to say that what could be the type of the paper. As I said, it might be a review article. It might be a, as one of the professors said, it might be a short communication, or maybe it is a proposal, right? So first decide on the paper. Second, decide on which particular journal you're targeting, right? So these two tasks, the most important task which has to be done. So the type of the paper, and then the decide on which particular journal you're targeting, right? And then let's see a sample sections in the paper. Let me, yeah, I think this is one of the current work which was discussed yesterday. So maybe the title might be completely different. So another important point which I wanted to say is nowadays people are going with interdisciplinary research. Can any of the process throw some light upon what exactly do we mean by interdisciplinary research? And I think even if we are going for any kind of NAC ranking or UGC rankings, they have a separate points for this interdisciplinary research. Anyone can throw some light upon what exactly do we mean by that?
You just have several disciplines, and even though you're not an expert in most of those disciplines, you have to kind of run around and try to incorporate, try to learn. I mean, this is what I have done in most of my PhD work. And yeah, it's quite interesting. And you also realize that most research is interdisciplinary, isn't it? Because
Exactly.
rarely do you get a problem which neatly fits into your electrical engineering toolbox or EC toolbox or any other toolbox. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's very well formulated because most of our research is interdisciplinary, especially people who are working on the papers related to computer science or maybe communication engineering. Those people are actually working in interdisciplinary papers, because what I mean by interdisciplinary is, let me show you the best example. Yeah, this is one of the interdisciplinary work. See, air pollution, environmental sciences is not my domain. So my domain is IT. So what we are doing here is we are trying to implement an Internet of Things strategy for monitoring air pollution. So this is the best example of interdisciplinary work. So having said that, so most of the journal would prefer that you try to go with an interdisciplinary work. Rather, I could say that it is a kind of a societal work. So that's given more importance, even when you're, putting a funded project. So we shall also be discussing about that. But then this is one thing. And then the structure. So this is the most important part which we need to highlight. Why? Because even though you might be focusing on a open access journal or maybe a closed access journal, but your abstract is visible to the public. So the people or the readers who want to get some idea on the topic, they actually read the abstract. So the abstract is more important. Now, what are the contents which has to be written in the abstract? Let me get some inputs from the people so that we can try to consolidate them. What could be the exact things which has to be written in the abstract? Maybe sometimes you might have read some of the abstract and you say that, okay, this is really a good abstract. How do you judge that? Any inputs?
So the abstract describes that what we have a clear intention on the topic which we are writing, sir.
All right. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, sir. My name is Sahiti, a
Yeah.
final year student of VCE.
Super. So the abstract clearly states how you're trying to introduce the topic. That's what you said.
Pardon, sir?
No, the abstract would actually give your exact idea of the topic. That's what you said, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Our intention on which we are writing, or us getting a clear idea, like the reader should understand what we are exactly going to tell in the paper.
Absolutely correct. Any other pointers on what should be there in the abstract? Because even as reviewers, we generally go with the abstract. Only then we decide that okay, whether this particular article is worth to do a review or not. So one point is very clear, that what is the idea we are trying to convey, and then why it is so significant. And the third point could be how we are trying to optimize that particular work. So we have the final thing should be your expected outcome. So what could be the expected outcome from this research paper? And obviously, the first section would be going with the introduction, where you're trying to talk about the domain, and then the subsection would be the background, where you're talking about what are the various challenges, how you have, different challenges and different schemes or different methods which are being highlighted. So the background should highlight that. And people actually miss this particular part, contributions of the study. Because most of the times, the papers which I have reviewed, this is the most important thing which is missing, and this is being expected. So maybe you have a certain pointers which could say that maybe these are the things which are being covered in this particular paper, or some of the sub-modules of your idea. And the second part would be your literature survey, where we are trying to consolidate different papers, and we are trying to summarize that. And here many people make a mistake about how do we do a citation. Let me quickly show you an example of that. Say I'm going with Google Scholar. Maybe let me go with the topic. Okay, maybe. Yeah. So this is my topic, right? E-waste augmented reality. Now, when we are trying to cite this paper, or how do we write this particular thing, most of the journals accept the APA format. So I try to copy this, put it in my references right here, and then copy the first author, oops, sorry, yeah, and then et.al dot, which is the citation one, and here you need to create a hyperlink. So if I click on one, it should go to the reference. And then maybe you can continue saying, okay, discusses or proposes so and so, so and so. So this is one standard way most of the journals go with. And another important thing which is missing in most of the papers is, once we try to complete the literature survey, let us not leave that like that. It should not be just so many paragraphs and paragraphs. Let us also highlight what are some of the significant works which might be, which could be highlighted. Let us put that in the table. Maybe 4 or 5 important papers, which is very recent. What are the methods, how the authors have approached that particular problem, and then what are the metrics which were used for evaluating that particular problem, and research challenges are what are some of the future work which can be done out of this. So this particular part, we need to write it. And then we would also go with, since this is this example I've taken as it's a case study paper. So I would also go with certain industry scenarios, or here we could refer something called white papers. Any idea what we mean by white papers? Have you guys heard about it? Anyone? You have certain journal articles, and then you have also white papers.
So when I was in the US, we used to refer to white papers as a kind of a proposal, even a shorter form of a proposal. But I'm not sure whether that is what you mean over here.
Okay, it's a shorter form of a proposal. Yeah, absolutely right. But then it is specific to a particular organization. Maybe I have certain research work done in Microsoft, and those particular research articles comes under white papers. So pertaining to a particular organization, or especially a company. So those are referred as white papers here. And of course, when we are coming to the proposed work, we need to have an architecture here. Maybe we call it as, maybe let me simply call it as my system architecture. So this particular system architecture would should be in such a way that it highlights the entire proposed work in a kind of a workflow kind of a format. And then once you're writing all your result analysis, everything inside this, another important point which is lagging is the significance of the work. After you write the result analysis, what could be the importance of this particular study, or what is the importance of this particular proposal? So we need to highlight again as pointers. And of course, when we are writing the conclusion, we need to also focus upon what are the future gaps which are being left out, so that the other researchers can take over from those particular gaps. So this is one of the way of how we are typically, following in our team. I mean, in my team. Let me go back to my slide. Yeah. So we have the structure of the paper, the literature survey we checked, and then the feasibility check. So now, after you do a literature survey, you would be sometimes surprised to see that, okay, my idea is already existing, because the moment we are thinking about the idea, somebody is also already working on it, or somebody has already published it. So that is the reason why when we go with literature survey, it is best to go with recent papers. So most of the journal reviewers, they have the comment that why don't you go with recent articles so that the significance of your proposal would be more highlighted? Because till 2021 this particular work wasn't existing, so this is something new, so you can actually defend your work. So that is one kind of feasibility check again. So this is the second feasibility check which we need to do. And since we are deciding on the type of the paper and we are already deciding on which journal we are trying to focus, so it is better you refer some of the papers in those targeted journal, so that even the editor and the reviewer, would appreciate that, okay, he has already referred some of the papers which has been published in my editorial. So that is one more plus point which would be, adding to your paper. Let me quickly show you one of the paper. Any discussions till now before I proceed for showing you some of the papers? Any kind of discussions or any queries or any pointers to be added here? Please feel free to go ahead. All right, so if you do not have any pointers here, I'm just taking a sample reference of how a paper should look like. So typically I'm taking a paper which was published in IEEE Transactions. This was my recent paper. Since we are talking about the IEEE society here, and it's a huge kind of a prestige that each of us has at least one IEEE transaction. Now, how do we decide on the title? This is very important. So we have a particular idea. How do we decide a apt title for that? Do we need to have some background research for that? Again, can we do this in this particular session? The brainstorm sessions. How do we decide on the title? Any thoughts about this?
It should hide your title should probably highlight the novelty in the paper or the significance of the research work, one of the two at least. And also, if you should also have certain things, certain keywords in the title, such that if somebody is, for example, here they are looking for stability of a smart grid, and your paper is a recent addition to that particular background. So if they type stability of a smart grid, your paper will come up first for them to reference.
Yeah.
So that is also another consideration.
Correct. So the keywords, as well as what is your crisp idea, that should be formulating your title. And apart from that, generally, as I said, in IEEE, we have two ways of citation. One is the one which I just said, this particular way, or we could go with either this, just a number. So we are just writing what are the authors discussing, and then we are just highlighting the number. Again, if you just see that number, if I'm clicking on that particular number, it directly goes to, it should directly go to my reference, right? So these are two ways of citing an article, and of course the images. The most important thing is your images, and the text within the images should be really clear. So sometimes we try to draw an image, and inside the text, I mean the text inside the image might not be clear. So that is a negative point again in a particular paper. And yeah, and also this particular as I said, we need to also talk about what is the future work, and also sometimes the acknowledgement. So this was also supported by Department of Corporate and Information Service, that is NTG of Australia. So some kind of funding was provided for this particular work. So we can also highlight that particular acknowledgement. And I also said that let us try to refer some of the papers in the targeted journal. So most of the reference, if you can see, it might be of IEEE access law. So at least at least a few. Let me come back. Now, having said about this, what are the, why does a paper get rejected? So many of us, maybe we have sent a paper for a particular journal, and then you just simply get a rejection. So why does it happen? So I have just collected some of the things which I have experienced. So maybe your experience might be different. So I'm just trying to highlight in general, what are the pointers which my team has encountered. So generally, if I'm let me first talk in a general perspective. Now, most of the journal, maybe a few years back, maybe they would highlight, most of the research paper, they would highlight maybe a novel hypothesis or maybe a mathematical equation, some amazing experimental plots. So all these were actually the benchmarks to pass through a peer review process. But now it's completely different. Because now what we are trying to say that, because I'm saying that I'm basing this on the fact that most of the journals or the conference process are dependent on maybe your PhD students or the postdoctoral fellows, or maybe even the faculties, or maybe even the research students. So what could be the reviewer's perspective? So obviously, if there is any particular review for a particular journal, he is already in part, that is, he is already abreast with what is a modern style of writing and how an article must be written. So that is the reason why previous to this I was talking about what are the sections and how do we go about with the sections. And one more point which leads to frequent rejection is, again, the English grammar. So we need to highlight on this because we are not native speakers. Let me highlight this point again. Most of the papers which gets rejected is, though the paper, technically it is sound, but the idea is not conveyed because the medium is English. So we need to have, or we need to concentrate more on this particular part. So that is the reason why I said that during proofread, we need to highlight the English part. So the way we are addressing. So always try to avoid, direct sentences. So generally in a paper, we do not write as, in the abstract, we do not write, we propose so and so, so and so, or maybe I propose so and so, so and so. So generally we go with this work highlights on, or this work proposes. So that would be better. Because your reviewer would be the first audience of your article. And some of the points which can be looked at is the clarity of what is being conveyed. Most of the journals nowadays are going with a graphical abstract. So maybe a workflow of how your idea should be rather than a particular paragraph. So that would be more, better compared to, making some English mistakes. So better we, draw it and send it. And then does it get rejected because of technical faults? This percentage is very, very less. Because if we are trying to write a research article, we are technically sound. That is the reason why we are writing the research article. So obviously the authors are much aware about the technical contents. So the two major reasons why it gets rejected is maybe the poor grammar, as I said, or the lack of clarity or the lack of the flow. So the continuity is missing. Maybe at first session, the author is talking about something. Then the second is somewhere in the, it's deviating out of the complete idea. So please stick around the complete circle. So some of the solutions which actually worked. Maybe when we are trying to go with the proofreading services, maybe try to identify a few members who might be in your department, maybe in your organization, who are really good in English, maybe some process from English department, or maybe you can go with the tools such as, Grammarly, or for formatting. One tool which I use is Overleaf. So this is something like, I need not download the LaTeX, but I have a web version of the LaTeX. Let me quickly show you that. I hope everyone is familiar with LaTeX. Let me quickly go with what Overleaf is. Thankfully, I've already logged in. So this is actually a tool where you can, let me go with the, yeah. So where you have three sections. So one is the section which contains complete files, and then you have your source code, that is the LaTeX code, and then obviously your text, right? So depending on the journal, so obviously you can download the LaTeX format or whatever format for that journal required, feed into this particular code here, and automatically this particular interface will try to adjust to that particular alignment. Maybe you have some kind of columnar alignment, or even people who are writing your project document or maybe your thesis, they can also follow this. Just try to download the LaTeX format. And then this particular tool will automatically align to that particular format. So what could be the, maybe the height or maybe the spacing, all these things it will take care. So you need not bother about the formatting part. And of course you have Grammarly, where we can, go ahead and check for the sentence formations. But I do not recommend Grammarly because it completely modifies your uh, complete view of that particular sentence. But again, for simple grammar corrections, we could, go for Grammarly. And then when you're trying to send the particular journal, there are two stages. One is the editorial stage. Once it passes the editorial stage, only then it goes, you get the reviews assigned. So what do we mean by this editorial scrutiny? Since I've been an editor for so many journals, so what we actually do is we try to check whether the particular research work fits this particular journal. Maybe I have a special issue on working of uh, grids, or maybe working on transmission lines. So whether that particular paper fits my special issue or maybe my journal. That is first thing. Second thing, is it in the format of the journal which I'm submitting? And then the third thing is the figures. Are they clear? So these are the things which the editor actually sees. So once it passes the editor, only then it goes to the reviewer. So better when we go with the articles with high impact factors, we go with a good grammar or maybe a graphical or a pictorial figures to represent most of your parts of your work, so that you try to avoid most of the writing part, which we might not be good enough because we are not native English speakers. So I think that's comes to the end of my topic. So let me take in some of the queries or any discussions which you might have.
So the floor is open to questions. If anybody has any questions, please ask right now.
Good afternoon, sorry, good evening, sir. My name is Sahati.
Yeah, good evening, Saiti.
Yes, sir. So right now we are working on our major project.
Huh.
So like we are about to write the paper, sir.
Sorry,
In
please
that,
come again.
yeah, no, we are about to write the paper, sir, regarding our major project.
Okay.
So is there any particular length for that, or does it need to be always crisp and to the point?
Very good question. So let me also address this. There are certain journals which actually, go with, um, only a particular length. Maybe let me show you a small example. Yeah. So, Saiti, I think to address your question, this is one short article from Willy Publishers. So generally, special issue articles, they actually formulate these rules that you need to not go beyond 7 pages or maybe 8 pages. So obviously we have to stick to that particular kind of pages. But most of the journals which you say, maybe if you have a proposed work or something like that, again, I hope people have heard about the most important or the most highlighted conference of IEEE, which is your GlobeCom. So even in GlobeCom, so they actually accept proposed work or maybe research paper. So the thing which you need to highlight is what is trending right now in the field. Maybe when we actually wrote this particular paper, it was almost beginning of 2020. So at that time we had this particular thing, COVID, and also I was working on blockchain technology. So I this is my research scholar, so my MTech scholar. So I he was working on this blockchain technology. So I asked him to formulate a framework for COVID. So to answer your question again, so again it depends on which particular journal or maybe if it is a special issue or if it is a short communication. Some of the papers even some of the proposals or some of the review papers even go up to 25 pages. So again, it depends. Saiti, I hope I answered that question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because in like in EC or in any field, but particularly in EC, if you're going to
Yeah.
write paper or thing, there comes where like microprocessors and
Yeah.
microcontrollers, different sensors you're going to mention in that. So for that itself, you're going to explain in like 3 to 5 lines, no, sir. So that itself takes some like it's a bit lengthy, no.
Hmm.
So.
Now again, I let me highlight that you need not mention, you know, how that particular sensor works, but better to mention what sensor you are using and how is it being used in your work. So better to avoid the basic stuff because again the reviewers are already knowledgeable.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Coming to plagiarism check, like
Yeah, that is another important thing. Yeah, tell me.
how much should it be, sir? Like generally, basically, we write a project
I
paper.
mean, the top journals accept plagiarism less than 10%.
Okay, so like students level.
Yeah, even if you are targeting the journals, the COVID paper which I showed was my students' paper. So even IEEE GlobeCom conference, it focuses less than 10%.
Okay, sir.
So better to keep the plagiarism as less as possible.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Right.
Any other questions?
So this overleap is a advanced version of the latest version, sir.
No, sir, it is an online version of LaTeX.
Okay, it's no need coding, sir, but
That's what, sir. It is a very simple code only. Say, for example, sir, for maybe I'm trying to highlight, this is a particular subsection. So I just put slash. It is mostly HTML code, sir. Very easy only.
Okay, sir. So then one more thing, sir, if you,
Yeah.
because I'm struggling a lot,
Yes, sir.
many after revision, the revision revised the comment sections, I got the your picture is not clarity. That means the pixel is less. Even though I'm using the many tools, what expectations they need, I don't know. Regarding this, your input, sir, that pictures,
Okay, sir.
images.
So they actually highlight on the pixel rate, sir. I do not know whether you understand the pixel rate or maybe the DPI. They call it as DPI.
Okay.
Then density of pixels. So that's what, sir. Any particular journal, they go with they say that your picture should be of high quality. Sir, maybe you can consult some of the design experts so that they can pixelate your image, maybe in Photoshop, or you have so many tools to improve the quality of the image. I hope that's what your question was.
Any open source tools available, sir?
Sir, open source tools, you have Visio tool, sir. When you are trying to draw the picture itself, you have the Visio tool. So it is free for academic use. Visio is by Microsoft. It is
Okay,
free
sir.
for academics.
Okay, sir. Nice, sir. Thank you, sir.
Right. All right, guys. So do we have any other questions? Because I have one last point to make.
I think go ahead. Anybody else? Yeah, I think you can go ahead, sir. Make your point.
Yeah. So what I want everyone to do is try to formulate the team, maybe right after this meeting or maybe tomorrow. Try to formulate the structure first. That is the structure which I just said, this one. So once you are done with the structure, then you just try to, the team lead would actually give the pointers, what should be written in each section, right? So that each of the team members can exactly follow that particular point. So this might be some of your, takeaway. I think with that, I'm done. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to listen to your expertise. And I would like to thank the Vardhaman College, the principal, Mr. Asif, our HOD of the Electrical Engineering Department, and the coordinators for the IEEE PES section, the Power and Energy section, Dr. Karpaya, Dr. Praveen, Dr. Ravi Varman for arranging these sessions, and all the IEEE PS student members who have, because of them we have initiated all these lecture series, which both the faculties and the students are gaining. I'm sure they're gaining something, some this thing out of it. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Dr. Shivaramakrishnan, because this was a very, very important topic. A lot of people have better clarity on how to proceed with structuring their paper, and how to collaborate, and how to address certain queries. So thank you so much.
So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. And I would also mention the officials of Vardhaman College for considering me fruitful or worthful for giving a talk in your institute. And also, I would also specially thank Dr. Anasuya for inviting me for giving this particular talk. I hope it was very useful, and let us continue our interactions in further meetings. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And also I would thank all the participants, the professors, the students who had participated in this particular lecture, who had given their inputs. Thank you so much for making this very interactive. And please take care, because the spread of the virus is more here. I do not know about how is it in Hyderabad, but please take care, guys. And thank you and good night.
Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah, the meeting is over. Ravi Varman sir, can we end the recording?
Yes, madam. Yeah.